Good evening, Ray. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Dr. Ping. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you. I have been interviewing parents and teachers, so I think you are um, uh, one of two, I guess, is having a different perspective. Is from the union, from um, uh, so that kind of perspective.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. And I know you are involved with FAIR. And do you mind share what is the reason you want to join FAIR? I mean, by the way,
Oh gosh,
I'm also with FAIR too. So that's how I
right.
got to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, uh, I believe that I was an early joiner of FAIR,
Oh,
right around the time that they had formed a year ago,
oh
right?
wow.
And I believe I had heard about FAIR probably from Barry Weiss.
Okay.
I was already following her, um, supporting her Substack,
Right.
and I believe she made mention of this new organization, Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism,
Uh,
and it sounded like an organization that I needed to follow. I had already been following Counterweight, Helen Pluckrose's group, out in England a bit, but when FAIR came up, it was right here in the United States, and so
okay.
I joined right away.
So you talk about the organization in England, and are they uh, fighting the same thing?
Yes, they are.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yep.
So I thought
And
this.
they've got good resources as well. Helen does a really remarkable job,
Oh,
and her
wonderful.
staff there.
And you said Alan Highland?
Helen,
Alan.
Helen,
Okay.
Helen Pluckrose. She's a co-author with James Lindsay of the book Cynical Theories.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. How do you write her last name?
Plu. It's hard for me to spell in my
Okay.
head. Pluckrose. Pluckrose, I believe. Pluckrose.
Ruckros?
See, yeah, Pluckrose.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, wow. So I think I probably the same thing like you. I mean, I definitely not that early. I heard about Barry Wise. I think it's from actually Jordan Peterson podcast. And from that point on, I start following her. And then from there, I got to know FAIR and what they are doing. And uh, well, I uh, I'm kind of like independent teacher. I do not belong to any kind of school system, but I teach at a private part-time private school, and also doing tutoring on the side. I mean, that's actually kind of my business. I used to teach at a private college, prep school, and I just couldn't stay there because we inflated grades so much that it become meaningless. So to me, that I just don't want to be in a system that actually is basically lying to the parents.
Right. That was part of the equity work for that school,
No,
or
no, it's before that. It's before that.
um,
So I think what happened, in a way, is unintended consequence from a policy. Do you remember the No Child Left Behind?
oh, yeah.
And that's when they started to test schools, basically holding school accountable, right? It sounds nice, right? So
Yeah.
they pay attention to like what kind of grades you gave and all that. And I think from that point on, schools starting to inflate their grades. And then the school actually I taught at that time is a Christian private school. So when I joined them, before that, I was an engineer. I work as an engineer for 20 years. And so I kind of like, in a way, kind of just jump into a system that is starting to see the problem, right? People maybe in there, they just get used to it. So I noticed that our grades are so inflated. And so I was asking my headmaster, and he said that it's really because all the schools in the county, in the neighborhood, they all inflated. So he felt like the pressure to inflate the grades. Otherwise, in a way, it's kind of unfair, right? If everybody inflated and you still keep the same, but you are judged on your GPA, then that puts your student at a disadvantage. But still, I mean, the parents did not know what is going on. So when they say the student got A and B, they think, oh, they're actually doing good in school. But the reality is you can get B or A without actually understand anything. So that was kind of, I started to, I left the school and just do tutoring on that. In that way, I mean, I know I can help someone, right? And also teaching some small private school that is more catered to the individual students. But then last May, I just heard about this DEI, officers in school district, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's when I get alarmed, because that kind of remind me about the Cultural Revolution. And actually, I grew up during that area. So I mean, political officers, that's everywhere, right? So that sound to me is like a political officer. So I started to dig into it, and I started to say, oh, this is not right. And so I started to read Ibrahim X. Kennedy's book, How to Be Your Antiracist, which is recommended reading, right, in many school district. And then from there, get into critical race theory, and from there, get into critical theory of the Frankfurt School, and then from there, get to the cultural Marxism. So basically, the whole is really what saying is a new kind of neo-Marxism, or maybe a variant of that.
Right.
Yeah. So what did you see from your perspective?
Well, like I told you before, I've been out of the classroom for the past 5 years. 5 years ago, or a little bit longer, I was elected to be the local president of the teachers union here in my school district. And because there are almost 1,000 certificated employees and almost that many union members now, that affords the president the opportunity to be a full-time release. So I have no teaching duties. I have an office outside of the school district. We reimburse all the funds back to the school district. So I work on behalf of all of the certificated employees,
Right.
most of whom are teachers, but we also represent nurses, school counselors, mental health specialists, a number of folks. Most of them, though, are teachers. And the thing that I started to see before I left the classroom was a stronger emphasis on, well, what now is called social emotional learning, right? But at the time, there weren't any curricula that we were using. It was a combination of, at least in the middle school, I taught middle school science. We had an advisory period, and advisory would happen every day. Most of the days of the week, it was used as like a study hall. Kids could catch up on their work. They could ask questions. They could go visit a teacher, their math teacher, or say a math teacher was doing a pickup lesson on some function and would ask for a bunch of students, so students would go over. But on like one day of the week, there would be these lessons that our counselors would find, and they were mostly about building character,
Right.
you know, truthfulness, citizenship,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. But nowhere is near, I think, some of the scary things that I hear now.
Right.
And I'm not sure that those things are embedded in my particular district. I mean, I know that they are in districts around in the state and across the country, but I'm not fully aware of what might be adopted for use in our elementary schools
Mhm.
or the secondary schools.
Oh, okay. Uh, yeah, uh, I think a lot of people get alarmed, or first of all, because of the COVID. I mean, a lot of parents just have the chance to see what the kids are learning, and and they are not happy with it because really not much teaching going on, um, and uh, um, and also if you are online learning, really, I think most school are not equipped for that. Like for example, like in my school district, I mean, if you go online learning, uh, uh, you could have some, maybe half the class are not showing up. And in that case, how can you teach, right? So it's really just kind of wasted the whole year. And so parents are definitely not happy. But then that gave the parents a chance to see actually what they were teaching in schools. And that's where they started to say, okay, that's, I don't know if you have the same thing in your school district, but like here in Indiana, I lived in Greenwood, which is a suburb on the south of Indianapolis. So we have Indianapolis in the middle, then we have the counties around it. So it's called donut counties. Now, donut counties are pretty much suburbs, right? They are middle class kind of families, and school boards, school district have at least have a lot of money, uh, and they start to see those really inappropriate books and graphic novels, like just like really sexual kind of um, materials that would be considered pornography outside the school building. Uh, so that's how the most of the parents are really not happy with it. Uh, do you see something like that in your school district?
Not yet. I mean, there were concerns raised, but more from staff
Okay.
than there have been from parents. Well, so in our state, Washington State, there was a bill that was passed a few years ago, and it had pretty significant support from the Washington Education Association. It was
Mhm.
called the Comprehensive Sex Ed Bill.
Oh, right.
I have to be honest, I haven't read the bill.
Mhm.
But there was a lot of concern from many members. And again, I don't know if even those folks who, they quit the union, a few folks did,
Oh.
over the passage of the comprehensive sex ed bill.
Hmm.
There weren't large numbers of union drops, but from the few people that I heard from in my bargaining unit, it was their concern over, well, that the union support of the comprehensive sex ed bill conflicted with their own beliefs, maybe their
Okay.
spirituality,
Okay. Gotcha.
things like that, and they were not happy with the union putting money towards and
Oh, okay.
championing the bill.
Right.
What has actually come out of that is unclear to me, but I will tell you, visiting some of our secondary schools, um, are you familiar with the gender unicorn?
No.
It's a cartoon image, or I think the gender gingerbread boy or gingerbread person. These are animations that are used, I think, to teach about gender.
Okay.
And I my understanding is to help facilitate conversations within the school settings about gender.
Okay.
And so for a while, in fact, it was my old middle school, in one of the display cases was a big, large version of the gender unicorn. And I noticed recently it was replaced by the gingerbread person, boy, girl, I'm not sure. But these are images that are very ubiquitous now in terms of school settings, to make friendly, I guess, cartoon image. Who's going to be afraid of a unicorn or a gingerbread character, and teaching about, whatever it is that they're teaching. But I think it's to spark conversations around, how kids are feeling and what they're thinking about in terms of their gender. So I'm seeing things like that. And I know what I'm more familiar with is how many staff were taking some of the changes in terms of professional development. So some of the books, the articles, the activities that some staff were trying to. So I think it could be that my district is not as rapid and avant-garde as some others in rolling out some of this ideological curriculum, but they certainly were testing the waters, I think, with staff. Because people would phone call me or they'd email me and they say, Ray, we just had to do a trust walk, or no, it was a privilege walk for professional development. Can they make us do that? And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You need to explain a privilege walk. And so people were getting bent out of shape over some of this training and some of the readings. And so consequently, 2 summers ago, because I was telling people, well, calm down. I'm sure it's okay, have an open mind, all of that. And so I went ahead and I read Robin DiAngelo. And I had all the typical reactions that she said a white person, somebody that looks like me would have. And so I asked myself, who with a better brain than me has read this book, White Fragility, and what are they saying? And that's when I discovered John McWhorter. And the rest, I guess I could say, is history there. Kind of putting me on the path towards understanding what I had seen going on in my union for the past 5 or 6 or 7 years. This big emphasis on social justice, but a departure from, I think, in my mind, classical social justice, civil rights, Dr. King's social justice. The work isn't finished. We're still work to do. Let's get cracking. I mean, that was part of the reason I got into education back, almost 40 years ago. But now it's a different animal. And I'm seeing a lot of the same things, at least in terms of the union and the professional development space that you're talking about. You're growing up in China during the Cultural Revolution, and having, now we've got a DEI, well, they're not called DEI, but effectively a DEI officer. Last year, our DEI officer actually brought affinity groups to the district, and I participated in a few of those. I was really curious, but BIPOC folks, POCs had their own, and we white folks had our own. And listening into colleagues and how they were talking, to me was very reminiscent of a bit of my upbringing as a Lutheran. My parents made me go to church and all that. And it felt very church-like. To do these affinity groups.
This kind of, Oh, wow. And so at that time, what is your concern? When you go through
Which
that,
time?
go through the affinity group, go through that kind of thing.
I guess my concern, well, there had already been some things that had happened here locally between me and some, I guess what I'll call them my very dedicated critical social justice activist colleagues,
Mm.
where so, going back a few years, in our bylaws, we've got some directions in there that our governing body needs to have representation that is kind of proportional in terms of, well, the language, well, we've changed it. It used to say ethnic minorities, now it says people of color,
Right.
or educators of color, that it's at least proportional to that of our membership. And our union membership in my district is around, it hovers around 12%.
Okay.
So somewhere in the neighborhood of just above 100 people identify as person of color from a variety of backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so our representative council, our executive board needs to have at least 12% representation as well. And if it doesn't, then I, the president, have to call a special election. The first year I was president, after getting some of the data and plugging it into a spreadsheet, and because nothing like that existed, I discovered that in fact we were out of compliance with our bylaws, and so held a special election. There were 4 candidates who identified as people of color, and it was decided, well, we'll just create 4 spots. And I said, well, we don't need 4 spots, 1 or 2 would do it. Well, the more the merrier was said. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to argue. And so those people were elected and brought us into compliance. Well, the end of that year, we changed our bylaws so that we would have, in the years where we weren't electing officers like the president, vice president, we would elect our building reps. They're like shop stewards in a working, like in an industry union, shop stewards. But we call them building reps, building representatives. And we open up, we did ballots for all of our work sites. And I was really proud that, in fact, through that regular election and the work that we've done over the last couple of years of really getting people more interested in union work, we slightly exceeded the representation. And so we didn't have to hold a special election.
Okay.
But about 6 months later, that wasn't good enough. So some folks wanted to make those 4 spots permanent. I said, well, we don't need to do that. And they said, but, we want to make them permanent because now our union, the proportionality should represent that of our student body.
Oh.
But we work with students, we're teachers, right?
Right.
But the students don't pay dues. We don't represent students directly. Why do we have to represent? I mean, why should our union be proportional in that way? Well, it just should, was the argument.
Where did that come from? Where did that directive come from?
From the members themselves, from the activist members themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I said, well, fine, here's how. It's a bylaws amendment. Here's how we would do it.
Right.
So without getting into all the details, it was created these 4 new spots. That for me was kind of the beginning of the what's really going on here. Okay. I mean, maybe I don't have to understand. There's a lot I don't understand, right? But this was different. There was something off about this project. Okay. And since then, it's continued. There have been other episodes, and I have over the last 2 years grown more confident in my voice to say, no, I disagree. That's wrong. We shouldn't be doing this. And my role as a presiding officer and getting better at parliamentary procedure, and the same thing is happening. Or similar things are happening with the statewide association. A lot of what we deal with are social justice issues. There's a
Mm.
creation of a new racial, social, and economic justice center.
Oh, wow.
So I would say in the vernacular that you and I speak now, there seems to be a party officer who
Mm.
runs that now in the union, right? The
Oh,
director of the center.
oh, wow.
A lot of times at meetings of the WA board, there's a lot of calling out of microaggressions.
Mm.
And in fact, recently I was just a day before a board meeting of the Washington Education Association, and I got myself elected to it 2 years ago.
Mm.
I was excluded from the meeting.
Oh, really?
And it was the first time in anybody's memory that a board member had been excluded from a meeting. And I come to find out that the reason I was excluded was because, well, I had a long dinner with the president
Mm-hmm.
of the state association. He'd come to the capital city, and we'd had a long dinner. And we got to the end of it, and I talked to him about how the meetings have gone the last few years, that I've been on the board, and that sometimes it could be really contentious. And I mean, I'm okay with good debate where there are rules and
Right,
decorum
right.
and all, but what's allowed to happen is people unmute. They talk about issues that are like distortions of reality, and call people out on crimes that are made up. And I know this for a fact because I'm implicated in a couple of those. At any rate, I
Mm.
just said, listen, and I read to him from a book that we use called the Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure.
Okay.
And in there is a segment about debate
Mm.
and the role of everybody during debate. And it's, you can attack vigorously ideas,
Right, right,
motions, but not people,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And if somebody does go into personal attacks or impugning the motives of somebody who spoke for or against or had a question on a motion or some order of business, then it's the presiding officer's duty to stop that behavior. And if the presiding officer doesn't, then it's somebody else's, some other member's responsibility to make to raise a point of order
Right.
and get the presiding officer to stop that nonsense. And I just said, I feel like I need to invoke this. And by way of example of the kind of things that I thought were problematic at our meetings, I named 3 individuals who happen to be women of color, but that's because recently they had asked a question at a previous meeting about something they knew almost nothing about, but it was about me. And I
Oh.
knew it was about me. And I didn't speak about it then, but these things keep coming up. And so, I told the president, I said, I'm going to use, standard code is still our operating manual. I feel like I'm just telling you that I might find myself raising a point of order because there's been a lot of misbehavior that's been allowed
Mm.
to happen during these meetings. And it's
Okay.
caused a lot of people to self-censor. A tremendous number of people just
Wow.
will not speak up. They will not speak their minds because
Wow.
they get attacked.
Yeah.
And so he said, well, can I bring this back to the executive board? And I said, of course. It's our manual, of
Right.
course. So he went back to the executive board, sat on it for about a week, and then said, well, Ray Nelson is going to weaponize the standard code, and sort of paraphrasing here, he's going to weaponize the standard code and silence BIPOC women. And I just, when I found out about this later on, about a month later, I did get to meet with the executive committee, and they told me this. Well, we were concerned, Larry. This person said you were going to weaponize, and we went into protection mode. And I'm just like, I can't believe that you're all saying this. This is incredible. I don't have that kind of power. All I would be doing would be raising a point of order.
Right.
That's all I would say. Point of order, Mr. President. Point of order.
Okay.
The conversation needs to get back to the issue, not attacking a person.
Right. And that has been there forever, right? That parliamentary procedure.
Absolutely. But it's not much used. And I think because these attacks, they come out of nowhere, they happen so fast. And the ones that I have known, intimately, I'm just like so frustrated. I know that I can't really speak. But I had gone back through the manual and reminded myself, oh yeah, the duty of everybody, to
right. And
if the president isn't doing their thing, my whole point of this is, so within the union, there is this sort of woke ideology, right, about calling people out, for whatever it is that they've said. Somebody uses the expression low-hanging fruit. Oh, that's a no-no,
yeah.
Tackling the easiest job first, but you can't say low-hanging fruit. And why is that?
Why? Yeah.
Because it makes people think of brown-skinned farm workers. That's one hypothesis. That's when the first time I heard that somebody had trouble with the expression low-hanging fruit, I thought, well, it doesn't make me think of brown-skinned farm workers. It makes, because I have fruit trees and fruit bushes. I think of picking the easiest stuff. It's the easiest job first. But then somebody schooled me and said, no, Ray, don't you know the Billie Holiday song? What Billie Holiday song? Strange Fruit, about lynching. And I said, wow. So that's all it takes, right, Dr. Ping? One person to subjectively, how they view the world,
right.
say, oh, I'm triggered by that. It made me think of Billie Holiday's song Strange Fruit, therefore lynching, therefore to use the expression low-hanging fruit is a trigger, and thou shalt not use it, and I will call you out if you do. And if you don't bend a knee, you're in trouble.
So that's considered a microaggression?
Well, they didn't describe it at that. It was either micro or macro. I don't think it really matters.
Right. It's a kind of perceived way, like you just hurt their feelings, whatever.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter whether or not you actually intended to do that.
No, right.
It doesn't matter. It's just like,
right?
It's how they feel, right? They feel hurt, then therefore you shouldn't say it.
Well, and what this group on the executive committee felt was that I was going to do harm. I mean, on a Zoom meeting, I don't control the buttons. I don't know how I would silence BIPOC women. And these are three very strong women. They have very strong voices. They have proven that. And so it's just ludicrous, but it did make me an example, right? It did. They were able to exclude me from a meeting and maybe send a message to anybody else who thought that they were going to raise a concern, express an opposing point of view, or raise a point of order, because now it's, well, Ray, we have to give the floor up to the marginalized, because they've been marginalized forever.
Right.
And these are college graduates. I'm not dismissing that they may have had some struggles in their lives, but marginalized, we're talking about college educated people here.
Right. Well, they probably came from maybe wealthier family than you do.
Maybe.
We just don't know, right?
Right.
I mean, if you look at, so, well, that's actually, it just really just remind me of what happened in the Cultural Revolution. Like everything you said, they can turn that against you. I mean, it's just like, it's like you couldn't even, there are people who actually have a very good imagination, how they
Oh
can
yeah,
twist what you say into something, you know, totally just like not true,
and-
but
and-
you use that against you.
absolutely. And
Okay.
and I've seen that because I've experienced it. In my local with some struggle sessions I was
Right.
invited to for wrong think or wrong speak, and then at the state level too.
So what is the struggle session? Is that called the struggle
Well,
session?
I guess it's my pejorative for restorative justice,
Justice. Okay.
restorative circle, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
what they do to you then in that? Are they going to like say just to show you like what you did wrong?
Well, it was less, from what I remember, it was less about them. I had to say what I did wrong, or what was I thinking when this thing happened. And there were like these 8 questions that you go through, and I just had to say, well, I don't understand how to answer this because I don't understand the context. What was I thinking when the event? What event are we talking about?
Wow.
Somebody needs to set the stage. And so already kind of it felt like, because that was one of the first ones I'd gone through, was very unsettling, because one would think that, well, there should just be clear answers to questions, but the questions were so kind of nebulous that I didn't understand where they wanted the conversation to go. So when they're talking about, what were you thinking when the event had happened, I had to ask, what event are you talking about?
Oh wow. So wow. And you are, is that mandatory for you to attend?
No, I did it voluntarily.
Okay.
Again, it was an internal, kind of union thing.
Mm,
I upset somebody because uh, well, it's a long story, but
okay.
out of respect for them,
Mm-hmm.
because this person I had a very long, good working relationship. I was troubled by something that they were a part of that was manifesting now in the district.
Okay.
And with an election coming up, this was election of like my office. I wanted to make sure that people knew that I was in some disagreement over some of the district policies,
Mm.
like the district's equity resolution, and this person had a big role in it. And I felt responsible to share with them that I was starting to have some real concerns over the district's equity resolution. But because I shared that with this person, I harmed them.
Oh, okay. So
And
the equity resolution is to create a position for a DEI officer.
I can't remember if the creation of, no, I think that position predates my district's equity resolution. I mean,
Okay.
it is an incredibly long resolution. There are a lot of components of it.
Wow.
But for me, the real clinchers in that, oh no, this is troubling, is they cite Robin DiAngelo as a
Uh,
source. They cite Tima Okun. Are you familiar with Tima
no.
Okun? The look up Tima Okun and the characteristics of white supremacy culture. Tima Okun has been working on this, I think, for more than a decade, maybe going on 2 decades.
How do you spell his,
And
how do you spell his
so
no,
Tima, Tema,
MA?
and then the last name is Okun, Okun.
Okay, okay. All right.
And those documents, and then some others, like articles out of some pop psychology magazines, are
Uh
cited as resources for this thing. I
right.
mean, as a science major, I mean, I get secondary sources, can be fine. I read secondary sources all the time, but if you're going to do something as significant as an equity resolution, and to cite this kind of
Okay.
non-scholarship,
Right.
just, it to me is troubling. But
Yeah. Oh wow. And you said the DI officer was before that, and by what what process that officer position is created?
Well, this is a hypothesis on my part because I
Okay.
don't know the exact facts, but for the longest time, there was a person who held the position of, they were a district director. Their title was world languages.
Hmm.
And maybe they had something else. They oversaw the various languages
Okay.
that were taught in the district. So Spanish,
Okay.
French,
All right. All right.
things like that. And then maybe something else to do with multiculturalism or something.
Okay.
I forget. But then somewhere along the line, it changed. It's still languages, but now I think it's languages and equity.
Oh, okay.
So in the past 2, 3, 4 years, maybe it changed and they added equity.
Okay.
So that's, that was a new thing. And of course, equity was to me one of those perfectly benign words that I thought I understood. Because to me, equity is fairness and impartiality.
Right. That was by
But
the, if you look at the dictionary, that's where we
yeah,
that's a definition. But like you said, they basically use that word but changes the meaning.
they changed the meaning.
Mm-hmm. Just
And so
whatever
now
they.
I'm in the, so one of the things I'm in the process, at least in my own little district here, trying to figure out, well, so how do they define equity?
Right.
And I'm more interested in seeing how they act
Mm-hmm.
vis-a-vis equity than how they might define it, because it's more about their actions. And I can't pinpoint my district yet. It's still too early and nebulous, but it certainly seems like we're going in the direction of um, same outcomes,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so I don't believe that we have gotten rid of advanced placement courses yet, or any advanced math yet,
Mm.
but there are rumblings about,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. Right.
doing something with grading and
Right. Yeah.
maybe baby steps, so it's not as overt and raises the hackles of parents and
Right.
teachers
Yeah.
too early.
Right. Oh, wow. And are you still president of your local union?
Yeah, I was elected to a third term last year, so I'm finishing the first year
Okay.
of another 2-year term.
Mm.
And yeah, so my members voted me back. I not as in not as great a numbers as been in the past. So I
Okay.
certainly now have my detractors, but
Mhm. So still right now the president is elected by the local union, right?
yep, by the members. Yep.
Okay. But at the state level, I mean you are facing a lot of those kind of how to say that uh pushback or harassment, right, at the state level.
Yeah, yeah. And because not because I'm president of the local, but because I ran to be a member of the state level
Right.
governance. Yeah, I also won re-election.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so that next 2-year term starts in this summer. So I was re-elected,
Oh, wow.
by an even larger group
Right.
around here locally. And so, but believe me, there have been some times over the past year where I just didn't think that I had it in me to keep going, that it would
Mm,
just be easier if I, you know,
right.
quit the WA, not go to those meetings where I have to feel like, I'm being attacked. And for just ridiculous reasons, not
Right.
even the ideas. It's just, who I am. But I've gotten over that. And no, they'll have to, I would rather us be working on improving
Yeah,
education, right?
definitely,
Than
definitely.
this nonsense. But
Yeah.
I'm in it. But I think that is the battle, right? It
Right,
really
right, right.
is
Right,
to improve
exactly.
education. I'm still hopeful that public education can be saved. I I don't know if it can. But as long as I'm still in it,
Yeah,
I'm going to try to work
right,
to saving
exactly.
public ed.
Yeah.
Although I think increasingly people that are talking even louder these days about school choice,
Hmm.
parents' rights, all that. I mean, yeah, I think that they have very valid points.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, especially if we push too hard and like take away AP classes and things like that, you'll see a lot of parents will. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, uh, like I have seen some incidents, I mean, at least circulating on Facebook, is about teachers who is tell their students about their, their sexual orientation or things like that, which is really shouldn't be, right? Uh, that shouldn't be the place to talk about those kind of things.
Right. I mean, in my district, we have a very strict policy. The district does about, it's called uh, professional boundaries.
Right, right.
And that to me, I have, as a union president, chief kind of advocate for the members who sometimes get in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
or at least alleged to have overstepped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stepped into wrong territory. Professional boundaries is one of those ones that is often cited by the district as the problem that happened here.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine that having those kind of this, and it's not like when I taught biology, right,
Mm-hmm.
to middle
Right,
schoolers,
right, right.
and we would talk, have our genetics unit, and of course we'd have to talk about sex, the
Right,
various ways that organisms
right,
reproduce
right,
themselves, sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction, and all
right,
of that. But I didn't talk about me.
right, right.
That would be completely
Yeah.
inappropriate
Well, there is
and
something,
violate that policy.
right? There's something like a professionalism, right?
Yeah.
But that has been, in a way, it seems like they don't care. I mean,
Why do you think the emphasis on kind of this gender exploration now with school kids?
well, I mean, for that, you have to look into, go back 100 years ago. This is a cultural Marxism. And this guy is Antonio Gramsci.
Oh,
So yeah,
Gramsci.
right. So he basically was doing some. He was put in jail by Mussolini, and he couldn't do anything except there. And but he can write, right? He has access to
Yeah.
that. So he was
Yeah.
kind of doing a lot of reflections. I mean, what went wrong, and because what went wrong is Marxist theory is that communism can only come from highly developed capitalist countries like Germany, like UK, like United States. But it didn't happen. It happened in Russia.
Right.
Russia was
Right.
not even, then happened in China, which is even more backward. So the theory doesn't work. So he's kind of thinking, why? He's not giving up on the communism. He just okay. I think Marxist is just too focused on material things like production, right? Means of production. He said, actually, no, we need to put emphasis on culture or the production of culture. And because he said that the reason communists couldn't win in UK and in United States because there's cultural institutions there, which is you have. He actually lists 5. You got family, you got religion, you got education, you got what else? Marriage, Oh no, part of the family, but five. I mean, five and law, and so and later on, actually, his followers at the entertainment. That's one of the institutions, the culture, right? That's also
Yeah.
culture production, and which so those institutions won't allow you to have a communism because they were against you. And so the way the communists can win is by infiltrating those institutions and control those institutions. And for that, then I mean that's actually what's happening. If you look back, what's happening is that's how what happening in the West is that the cultural institution has been taken over. Now it become more obvious. This is those kind of woke, right? Wokeness, those people come in. That's kind of their like their how to say their young generations. Those they have the energy, right? And they have that. But the idea is that they took over the cultural revolutions. So that's why they pretty much you know the higher education now is pretty much controlled by the neo-Marxists. And then, of course, you look at Hollywood, you like what happened recently in Disneyland, right? Disney World. So all those actually the cultural institution, media and all that. Oh yeah, there's media. I forgot that. All that. That's their goal. But that's what we are saying right now. And one of the things to break down the family is to have this so-called sexual education at the early stage. Is really to encourage them to have those sex outside marriage, and of course now it's become even you talk about gender fluid and transgender and all that. This whole thing just create a chaos, and because that's how the Marxists believe that the new world, which is communism, the heaven on earth has to come from the ruins of the existing world, the capitalist kind of ruins. So if you look at Abraham Candy's book, I don't know, have you guys used that in the professional development?
I don't think it's been a required reading in my district yet.
Okay.
I think Dr. Kendi spoke to the Washington Education Association board a couple of years ago before I was elected.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Well, he's highly praised.
Right. If you look at his book, I mean, that's where I do not understand. Okay, unless there are people who praise him has been already kind of indoctrinated. In his book, How to Be Your Antiracist, he actually, there is whole paragraph, not just paragraph, chapter talking about capitalism, but there is a paragraph. It says that capitalism is racist and that racism is capitalist. And those two are born together, the birds together, and these two will die together in kind of unnatural causes. What do I mean by unnatural causes? But basically saying, if we want to get rid of racism, we have to get rid of capitalism. What that mean, right? That is communism. There's no other way to put it. But they are turned that into those names like equity, anti-racist. So people hear that says, "Oh, that's really that's good thing, right?"
Yeah. Right.
But they change the meaning. But they change the meaning of that. If you look at Kendi's book, and in order to be an anti-racist, you have basically joined them. You have to do something. You have to be active. You cannot just,
right, correct,
be neutral. You have to be part of them to be otherwise they are racist. It doesn't matter even you have nothing to do with it. Yeah. But that's their ideology. But then that ideology is being, promoted in the K through 12 kind of education.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we definitely, in a way, actually, I'm in the process of writing a book, basically to just show how the things get developed from Antonio Gramsci to Frankfurt School to the 60s. And well, the 60s radicals like Bill Ayers and Weather Underground, right? They went to prison, but after prison they went to college. I mean, they went to colleges. They went into like Bill Ayers actually went into early child education.
Oh boy.
So those people as they get in those, because they know education is a very important institution, right? If you can infiltrate, you can take over that, then you can overturn the you can to overthrow the current in a way and if you look at all the democratic countries has a Achilles heel, has a weak spot. The weak spot is votes. If you get enough people to vote you in, then it could become too late, right? You look at Venezuela, you look at other countries, and I mean, of course, you see problems. I mean, capitalism has a lot of problems, right? Sure. You see the inequalities and all that, but I mean, what is a better system?
Exactly.
Right. So far, none. Right. I mean, I grew up in China and also lived for 11 years in Canada. I mean, that even though it's not full-blown socialism, but there are socialistic kind of features to that. When I was living at that time in Vancouver, Canada, we only have like one auto insurance company, which is owned by the state government, the provincial government. We only have one power company. We only have one telephone company. So everything is controlled by the government. Yeah, that's not
interesting.
Good. That's really not good. Socialism, I mean, has never really worked. But there is always people keep trying, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but anyway, that's what, in my opinion, that's what we are saying. What's happening right now is because that the neo-Marxism and those activists, especially they started in the college, and now when they took over they have been taking over the education for a long time, and so that's where the people who graduate in the past like 20, 30 years, they have been kind of fed into that ideology. Like my wife, when she went to IU Bloomington, their school education actually is the top notch. So he went there for her master's degree, and her professor basically told them that their job is to make social activists. Yeah, and so that's hasn't been there for decades. It's just like as parents, and we just don't know. We are not aware of it.
Right.
Yeah, and also
that if there was any of that ideology that was tried to be impressed upon me, it didn't stick.
when did you went to your get your degree?
Well, I did 3 years of college back in the early 80s and then took a hiatus for a while. And then I was taking an unconventional path into education.
Okay.
So I worked in nonprofits for a number of years.
Okay.
And then when I moved up to Washington State, I ended up going to and finishing my undergraduate work at the Evergreen State College, if you've heard about Evergreen.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was in 95.
Okay.
And then I did 1 year in the master's in teaching program there. And that was 25 years ago. And I think I understand now why it wasn't a good fit with me.
Okay.
And that was I think woke ideology light probably back then.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
so
it's really getting worse in the past 20
right.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's clear, right? Look at
Yeah.
where we're at. So
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
a
we
good
know that timeline wise, right? CRT was coined in, I think, in 89,
yeah,
something.
I was going to say 88, 89. Yeah.
Right. And then you have critical pedagogy that in 95, and that get into the education, basically how the CRT got into education. Before that, it's mostly in the law schools.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, but now it's kind of spread everywhere.
Yeah. Well, some of the language was, I found it, 5, 6 years ago, new. And
Mhm.
I guess I was curious. So, I mean, first time I heard the word anti-racist was from a colleague, and it was just at, we had just shut down for COVID,
Okay.
but this colleague wanted to do some sort of um, professional development. So we were all at a park. It was, March or April of 2020. And I hadn't read Kendi. I don't even remember if I had heard of Kendi at that point. But, this colleague was talking about anti-racism, and we did some work on butcher paper and all. And I just thought, well, it's an interesting term.
Right.
I mean, who wouldn't want to be anti-racist? Yeah, I'm against racism.
Right. Yeah,
But then I
exactly.
realized, oh, that's not what anti-racism is, or at least
Right.
not with the capital A, not
Right.
the
Right. Right.
Ibram Kendi flavor
Right.
of
Right.
anti-racism. So
Yeah.
another Trojan horse.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of terms they just co-opted and sounds good, but what they're doing, just like I said, like a Trojan horse gets slipped in. So you really have to know what they mean by the terms they are using. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. No, yeah, thank
Well,
you
it's
for
been
the
a
time.
pleasure, Dr.
It's
Payne.
kind of long, it's about an hour. Wow. Yeah, thank you. Really enjoying talking with you, and also appreciate that you're still there. You are fighting. I mean, for me, I can, I mean, I won't be surprised that if we don't do anything, a lot of teachers will get really hurt.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
agree. Yeah.
it's even, I mean, like when I was in a school system, I feel that. I mean, it's hard to teach anymore. I mean, the discipline is not there, the restorative kind of justice and all that. The kids are not really doing their work, and and if they make all the mistake, I mean, I was a math teacher. If they can
Yeah.
get every problem wrong, they still get 50%. It's just like, no, that's not. I mean, kids are kids, right? If you lower the standard, they are not going to do the work.
Exactly. Well, and
Yeah.
we've seen that for 2 years, thanks to
Right.
COVID.
Yeah. So, well,
Well,
thank
really
you.
appreciate it again, and
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you in some fair spaces.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah, definitely. I'll be there next Thursday or this Thursday, I guess, in 2 days for the
I'm not sure if
happy
I can
hour.
make it, but
Okay.
because we've actually got our state representative assembly
Okay.
running at that point in time, but I might be able to duck out for an hour and see a bunch of educators on the fair space.
Right.
So
Well, at least to keep us kind of not crazy, right?
yeah, yeah,
At least we say,
right,
okay, there are people like us who are
yeah,
thinking the same way.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Hope to see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.